Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Woolforth. I'm the Acting Director of the Dickey Center for International Understanding, and it's my very great pleasure to welcome you to the 2012 Rabbi Marshall Meyer Great Issues Lecture on Social Justice. All this year, the Dickey Center is celebrating its 30th anniversary. We were, in fact, founded in February of 1982. And our process of celebration is to identify, highlight, and celebrate the legacy of Dartmouth's 12th president, John Sloan Dickey, in whose honor the center was created. One of Dickey's legacies was his desire to make great issues a fundamental part of a Dartmouth education. He launched in the early 1950s a great issues course that was required for all seniors. That course was discontinued in the 1960s in large part due to changing mores in education and the inability of people to bring in as many distinguished speakers as John Sloan Dickey was able to do. But a number of years ago, the Dickey Center reinstated what we call the Great Issues Lecture Series to highlight some of the important issues of our day and ensure that the Dartmouth community had an opportunity to engage with individuals who were actively involved in those issues. We're thankful today for the generosity of Andrew Lewin and his wife Marina, Andrew, class of 1981, for endowing today's lecture dedicated to a social justice topic and for making social justice a permanent part of what we consider great issues at Dartmouth. Great issues in social justice speakers are selected in consultation with the Tucker Foundation here at Dartmouth. Tucker is the Center for Spirituality, Service, and Social Justice, so it's fitting that they join us in identifying an appropriate speaker, and I welcome you on their behalf as well. I'm reminded that our commitment to social justice is often inspired by the work of individuals. For the Lewins, it was Rabbi Marshall Meyer, and those of you who arrived a little bit earlier would have seen a videotape loop about Rabbi Meyer's life and his works. And it's fitting that today, again, we have an individual addressing us who is equally inspirational and for whom, who could personify for us the challenge of social justice. To provide you with a very fitting introduction and wholesome introduction to our speaker, Aqqaluk Lynge, today, I've asked my colleague, Ross Virginia, to do the formal introduction. Ross Virginia is the Myers Family Professor of Environmental Science, but also the director of the Dickey Center's Institute for Arctic Studies. So please join me in welcoming Ross, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's indeed a very special honor for me and a privilege to introduce a world leader around the issues of indigenous rights, a Greenlander, a friend, and a colleague, Mr. Aqqaluk Lynge. Aqqaluk is chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council and is a world leader, a poet, a writer, and a teacher. He is the leading voice for Inuit interests and positions and aspirations for the Inuit stretching across the circumpolar north, and that includes Alaska, Canada, Russia, Greenland. Greenland, as you know, is on the front lines of climate change. You can't pick up a newspaper these days without hearing something about the dramatic social, political, and environmental changes in the north. We had a meeting with graduate students today, and it was even brought up that if you watch the Super Bowl commercials, there were clear Arctic references embedded in that. So we all share in this interest, but we have an opportunity today to hear firsthand what the true issues are and what the challenges are and what is facing the peoples of the North in Greenland. A little biography here about Aqqaluk. Aqqaluk grew up in a small community on the west coast of Greenland, Asiat. And it turns out that this is now one of the sort of a ground zero for potential oil and gas development in Greenland. This is a very special, important place and one that he is attached to personally. As a young person, Aqqaluk was sent to Denmark for education. He was gone for about 10 years. And when he came back from Denmark, Greenland was a very different place. But Aqqaluk was a different person too. He came back as a poet, interested in politics, and having formed many personal and important relationships with young activists in Denmark who came back to Greenland in that era wanting change, wanting to fight for social justice, civil rights, and to ensure the welfare and the future of all Greenlanders. He quickly became engaged in politics. He formed the IA Party, which is today a very important political party in Greenland. And they were involved in moving Greenland from a colonial arrangement with Denmark to home rule, and then recently to self-rule, self-government. In that period, Aqqaluk also became broadly interested in the rights of all Inuit peoples throughout the circumpolar north. And he was instrumental in the formation and the growing and the development of the ICC, the Inuit Circumpolar Council. And I would expect that Aqqaluk would consider that probably the great achievement of his life, is the importance and the role of ICC in global affairs. ICC has done much to shape the future of the North, of the Arctic, and the Inuit peoples. So why Aqqaluk here today, and what's the relationship between Dartmouth and Greenland? As a contribution to the International Polar Year in 2007, the Dickey Center, under Ambassador Kenneth Yalowitz and others here, felt that we wanted to branch out and form some new relationships. We wanted to become more directly engaged in issues of the North. And we began to talk about perhaps Greenland as a place where we wanted to learn more. And we began to develop an engagement with Greenland. And Aqqaluk was one of the very first people that welcomed us to Greenland and helped us move through that society and begin to learn more and more. And now when we go back to Greenland, we have many, many good friends there. We have Aqqaluk and Lynge and Puyu and Tina and Alfred. And the list goes on and on. And this is a very special and important thing that we now share with the people of Greenland, is our interest in one another and the ways that we can learn to work together. During that process, we picked a project to work together on. And Aqqaluk, one of the talks that I remember the most hearing him give in Greenland was, the subtitle was "Scientists Need to Do More." And it was an invitation for Western scientists to think about how their science is relevant to people facing environmental change. And more importantly, how to engage in partnerships and balanced collaborations that would make the science better and would make us long-term friends and partners. So we wrote a grant to the National Science Foundation and said we want to do this. And we were successful. We ended up with a grant for a graduate training program called IGERT. And we're in the process of training scientists and engineers from science disciplines at Dartmouth to work in Greenland and other places, but to become true partners with the peoples of the North in the way that they frame and shape their research and the way that we work together. And this is an ongoing project, and Aqqaluk has spent much of his time here meeting with and talking to and mentoring the graduate students who are part of this program. Aqqaluk has had a close attachment to not just Greenland and Inuit interests, but the interests of all indigenous peoples. We at dinner last night, Aqqaluk brought up the importance of September 13 in his life. Aqqaluk was a member of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues at that time. And in September 13, 2007, the UN Declaration on Indigenous Rights was adopted. Aqqaluk he recounted a 20-plus year struggle to working with many people from different indigenous communities through the UN framework to achieve the success and the declaration that is now, I think, an important framing principle for the future for all indigenous peoples. And Aqqaluk, thank you so much for your hard work and being so central in that role. I want to again thank the Marina and the Lewins for their contributions to this lecture series and allowing this to happen here tonight. And wherever Aqqaluk goes, one of the things I've also found is that he has many friends and they show up. So we have some people here tonight that I just want to quickly acknowledge as being here to share with Aqqaluk their important work. We have from the Consul General's Office of Canada, New England region, we have Consul General Patrick Binns is with us. Thank you very much. In the front row here. With him is a very special friend to the Dickey Center and the Institute of Arctic Studies, and that's Mark Jacques. He handles, through the Consul General's Office, economic and academic affairs, which means he He provides us money, encouragement. He finds people for us to collaborate with, and he's always welcome. So we're always glad to have you here, Mark. Part of this journey of becoming engaged with Greenland really involved a process of introduction and getting to know one another. And one of the things that we've learned is that, in fact, it takes a sustained relationship of back and forth and growing and understanding. And our initial introduction to Greenland was really formed through Professor Marianne Stenbeck, who is here from McGill. She's also in the front row. She's a professor of cultural studies in the English department at McGill, and has worked her entire life on Inuit issues and communication issues and relationships between other people and the Inuit culture. And thank you so much, Marianne, for getting us started in Greenland. And so the last thank you, I want to acknowledge Ambassador Kenneth Yalowitz, who just recently retired as director of the Dickey Center. And Ken was very patient with all these ideas and talk about Greenland as a place we should go and we should learn and we should invest. And he became completely engaged, and he came along, and he was there, and he learned, and he contributed. And he was always strongly supportive of our relationship. And I think that, as Aqqaluk would say, another very close friend in our journey between Dartmouth and Greenland. So thank you, Ken, for everything you've done. Okay, so enough of that stuff. And what I'd like to do now is, Aqqaluk, in addition to being the best recognized international leader from Greenland, is also a poet and a writer. There's this other side of Aqqaluk that it's always a pleasure to draw out. And Aqqaluk was here in 2008 as a fellow at the Dickey Center. And, I sort of thought he was going to come here and do all that high-level policy stuff, and I'm sure that he was doing that. But what he also did is he produced this book. And it's an anthology of some of the poetry he wrote, mostly from his younger days. And it's really powerful stuff. It's liberation poetry, it's environmental poetry. It's about his relationship with Greenland and its people and the challenges that Greenland faces in emerging as an independent nation. The book it's published locally as well. It's by the International Polar Institute, which Marianne is quite closely associated with, Hanover and Montreal. And the title of the book is The Veins of the Heart to the Pinnacle of the Mind. The poems are published in Greenlandic as well as English, and I encourage you to look for this. But Aqqaluk's going to be talking about, I think, about the sort of the lead up and the challenges that Greenland has faced in its movement from its long history to its position now under self-government. But it's important to think about the past in order to understand the future. So I want to read just three short segments of a poem called Arctic Riches. Okay? And I think it frames the issue around natural resources in Greenland, development options, and who gets to decide, and what is the future of the Arctic. So, Arctic Riches by Aqqaluk Lynge. Centuries of the white man's colonization and power are nothing compared to 10,000 years of our own wisdom. Our land is our life, the lakes, the rivers, the ocean, the ice, the caribou, and the fish, the seal, and the whale. Yes, nature is part of our knowledge, insight into what is our own. But danger threatens from every direction. There are those who dig in our earth, empty its veins, change our foundation. There are those who limit the hunt, take away the good food that sustains us. Okay? So this is one side of what has happened, but there's also a future for Greenland. And I think Aqqaluk is the best person that I can imagine to engage us in what the possibilities are and what our role in that future might be. So I want to thank Aqqaluk for permission to read that poetry. And please join me in a very warm welcome for Mr. Aqqaluk Lynge. Thank you. Thank you, Aqqaluk.
Thank you so much for such a nice introduction. Also, thank you, Rush, and especially Ken Yalowitz for this invitation, and for the Institute, and for Dartmouth, and for all of you coming here. I hope that I won't disappoint you. I think that the Rabbi Meyer issues really have everything what I always have done throughout my life. Especially the repairing the world through social action is something that really is my guidelines throughout my life. I'm actually born as a subject of Danish colonial rule way back in 1947. And I became a citizen of Denmark in 1953 when Greenland became part of Denmark. And then we gained home rule in 1979, and 30 years after, we gained what we actually sought for many years, namely the semi-autonomous status within the Danish state. So we are going to discuss a few things here tonight. And I'm starting up with the whole circumpolar region here, because that's the world as we see it from top of the world. And it's also an area that of so much interest from outside that we do a lot of speaking around the world to also to our indigenous peoples that we work with all over the world. If you look at the map now, you will see Greenland in red. And just across, you will see the Canadian Arctic. That's where the Inuit also live. Greenland, with its 57,000 people, are the largest part of the Inuit world. We are around a little more than 50,000 people living in Greenland. And then across at the Canadian Arctic, that's our nearest neighbors, and we actually have the same areas and hunting areas. Where do I put this? Over here, that's actually the Thule people living here, and the West Greenlanders and the East Greenlanders living here, and then the whole area here is part of it are the Nunavut territory, and it's another long story that we could tell here. And here is the Alaskan Inuit area. We are including the Aleut Islands here, even though they don't recognize themselves as part of Inuit. But I'm not trying to include them, but they will eventually be part of the whole movement in the future, I'm sure. And then we have only 1,100 Inuit living in the Bering Strait area, which we call Chukaka. And I have included the whole. Let me start with the Scandinavian area here, where the Sami people, the Scandinavian indigenous peoples, are living. There's around 75,000 of us, and for all Greenland, Canada, Alaska, and Chukak, the Inuit population is around 170,000, all in all. The Samis, 75,000. And then you have the whole area of northern Russia, which is very special. And we have relationships with the Russian Association of the Indigenous Peoples of the North. And there's around 250,000 living there. And it's, you see, it's half of the Arctic. When I'm showing it, I'm going to tell a little bit about the things that we have done and why we are together, and also why it's so important that the Arctic peoples work closer together. The Inuit Circumpolar Council started way back in '77, established in Barrow, Alaska. By the time the oil in North Slope area was discovered, and the oil rush started, and the pipeline building was established. So throughout the 80s, that changed the Alaska population also completely, from around 300,000 people living there. There are now around 800,000 to 900,000, a little under a million, I think. So the oil changed the whole picture of the Alaskan life as well. But even before that, we actually met. I met the first other Inuit way back in '73 at a conference in Le Havre, France. And that's where I met a Canadian Inuit for the first time. And that was very interesting. And we have a long history of international cooperation, and Inuit have always longed to be together. The last, the only that actually connected us was the Danish Greenlandic explorer Knud Rasmussen, that traveled with Greenlandic hunters around all over the Arctic. And you see, there's a long story here to be told, but I only show it to show you that in order to work together, you have so many other avenues to go through. As a non-governmental organization, you have to go through and categorize within the UN, and that's why through that UN membership that we are able to work together on the issues with the governments. It took a while to include the Russian Inuit, as you would imagine. In '86, they visited Greenland for the first time, and it was the first time that they saw other Inuit in the world. So, but I went over there in '84 for the first time. I think it was right after Gorbachev was elected or appointed president, and then in '87. In '87, I was invited to Kremlin to speak in a conference for the 70 years of the Soviet Union existence. And when I'm looking back now, all the the dictators that I met there, they are going away. And but I remember once that it was not allowed to take pictures at all in that Kremlin meeting. There was world leaders from all over. But the one kiss I really wanted to take as a picture was Castro meeting Arafat, and they were it's over that way. I have that picture, and I'm sure that someday I will sell it to someone. But well, that's one of the big issues that actually went through. It wasn't funny at all, but it was also disheartening sometimes to talk to bureaucrats that really didn't understand the whole issue. But well, we succeeded in connecting to the Russian Inuit, and that's the most important thing. And why we are together is actually because of the ILO Convention, the International Labour Organization, placed in Geneva, part of the UN institutions. In 1957, had a first vision of supporting indigenous peoples within the labor force around the world. And we went into that, and the Convention 169 from '89 is actually the one that allows the 300 plus million indigenous peoples around the world to have a connection, institutionalized connection with their governments, with the international community. So it's very important. And the first decade of indigenous peoples actually was part of your history, that the Hawaiian king was, it says, taken away. Well, that was the decade, the first decade that actually pushed the legacy of the work that we are doing. And of course, we work closely with the Danish government on many issues, and they have been supporting the indigenous rights throughout the whole process. And that's why we could, both Denmark and Greenland could ratify the ILO Convention 169. It says in short that they recognize the rights of indigenous peoples to be part of a democratic process, and their wish for self-determination. And so that's the basic rule of what we actually are doing. And the historical things I will come back to. And as you see, the United Nations, as it's organized that way, we are members of ECOSOC that way. And within the ECOSOC, many of the indigenous peoples organizations and other civil society organizations are organized as members, Category 2 members of ECOSOC. And that's where ICC come in. And for the first meeting there was on the indigenous peoples was actually in 1982 in Geneva. And ever since that time, ICC have been engaged, and it resulted in the formation in 2002 of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. The permanent question is, the word permanent is very, very important to us because it also continued in other areas that I will come into. You see that under the General Assembly, we are directly under the United Nations General Secretary, and the General Assembly has their other institutions, and that's where Greenland and Denmark are member states that way. And we have a right to appoint members to United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. We have 16 members there, and half of them are appointed by governments and half appointed by indigenous organizations that have formed the globe in another way than the one that we know from the United Nations organization. So we divide it into 7 areas instead of 6 of the United Nations that we deal with. And that way we have made sure that North America and Latin America also have one extra seat that is rotating besides the one that North American already have. ICC belongs to the Arctic area together with the Sami Council from Scandinavia. That way we make sure that we can divide the seats, each of us, and keep it. So that's how the United Nations work are organized. And you see, then the first international cooperation in the Arctic actually started earlier with, not with the states, not with the governments, but with the indigenous peoples. And besides that, indigenous peoples always have sought to have a close relationship with science, the academics that we work with. And through that connection throughout the 70s, we were able to, actually it's ICC that first talked about that the states surrounding the area of North Pole work together in order to protect the environment. So the Arctic Council was established. Arctic Council consists of course, Canada, Denmark, Greenland, and Faroe Island is also part of Denmark. Finland, Iceland, Norway, Russia, Sweden, and United States. The very important thing that is part of the constitution of the Arctic Council is that we have the permanent participants. And the first permanent participant that have been working and lobbying for membership and being part of the member states is mainly ICC, the Sami Council, and then the newly formed Russian Arctic indigenous peoples of the North. And those are the ones that actually organized themselves by looking at how ICC was organized. So we went over there in 1991 and saw and oversaw the formation of the Russian indigenous peoples, which was a little bit difficult because in Russia there are so many other nations living, and Ken would know from his long time in Soviet Union how the system goes. So it takes a while for Russians to accept that. But it didn't take long for Canadian governments and the other indigenous groups and in Canada and Alaska also to include the Gwich'in. They are closely connected to the Athabascans. It's actually, but they are crossing the Alaskan and Canadian borders. And that's why they became members after the formation of the Arctic Council in 1996. And they also include the Aleut, because Aleut, like I show it here, is the Alaskan. There's an US part and then a Russian part. So that's why the Aleut people are also living in two countries. The Arctic Council is the only Arctic instrument we have where important policies are decided and where guidelines are set. And we can't do that without the working groups. It came out after the Arctic environment assessment that was made in '95, and they decided to have several working groups, and that's why you see that through those working groups, you can imagine how many scientists that actually are sitting in those very important areas, and that's how indigenous peoples are engaged as well. You have the Arctic Contaminants Action Program. It's a big issue, monitoring and assessment program, and sustainable development working group that are led by us together with other indigenous groups and organized with each member from each country member. So that part of it is the actually the human dimension of the whole business. Of course, emergency prevention, preparedness and response, it's about like oil spills, and the protection of the Arctic marine environment as well. And of course, the conservation of Arctic flora and fauna. I don't know of any other organization that really includes the people of the North that way. But you also have to count out when you look at this area here that except for the oil companies placed here and there, and big mining operations, and big military installations that like the US Thule Air Base up here, you don't have any other people living in those areas. It's us that goes through the dark season from November, and in some places like Thule, the sun will not arrive before February 24th. So that's the harsh reality of life up north. Well, what did we actually, how do we work together? The UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, as Ross mentioned, we work with that part of it for 24 years before finishing it. It's not actually new rights. It's a compilation of so many conventions around the world under the United Nations system, put into one, and that way make sure that it also those rights are also for indigenous peoples. The most important thing, I think, in the context of what I'm talking about here is the free, prior, and informed consent question. And it's about the mineral resource development and in industrialization in indigenous lands as well. And we are stating there on Article 32, you can read, indigenous peoples have the right to determine and develop priorities and strategies for the development of use of their lands or territories and other resources. Well, why do we write that? Because it's so important that we have that right, of course. And states shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the indigenous peoples concerned through their own representative institutions in order to obtain their territories and other resources, particularly in connection with the development, utilization, and exploitation of mineral, water, and other resources. States shall provide effective mechanisms for just and fair redress for any such activities, and appropriate measures shall be taken to mitigate adverse environmental, economic, social, cultural, and spiritual impact. That's where we are when we are talking about the future and the future life of the development of those areas that beforehand were not accessible. The Inuit of the Arctic then decided in our summit last year to make sure that people understand what we also talk about. We are saying that healthy communities and households require both a healthy environment and a healthy economy. Economic development and social and cultural development must go hand in hand. And greater Inuit economic, social, and cultural self-sufficiency is an essential part of the greater Inuit political self-determination. So we are putting what we have in theory from the United Nations institutional wording into what we think is reality of today's Inuit world. And we are also saying that resource development results in environmental and social impact as well as opportunities for economic benefits. And you can read here that, well, the longest lasting impacts must have the greatest opportunities and a primary place in the decision making. So if the resource development takes place in our country, in our lands, in our territories, well, we have to have some principles that apply to us and the rest of the world. We are sure that we must make sure that resource development contribute actively and significantly to improving Inuit living standards and social conditions. And non-renewable resource development in particular must promote economic diversification through contribution to education and other forms of social development, physical infrastructure, and non-extractive industries. We are not living in a walled area. Our world is part of the global economy as well, and we have to make sure that there are policies that we follow, and that we make sure that the Inuit themselves also are part of the whole decision making. So we have some responsibilities as well, as we are asking for full partnership in resource development. What else? If you look at the Greenland situation, I'm not going back to the Canadian or the Alaskan or the Russian situation. If there's any questions, we can return to that. I have worked for independence of Greenland throughout my life. But what we can achieve is also, as a small nation, what we have achieved now, namely the Act on Self-Government that was enacted by the Danish Parliament in 2009. And here, the people of Greenland, the Greenlandic people, is a people pursuant to international law within the right of self-determination. And the act is based on a wish to foster equality and mutual respect in the partnership between Denmark and Greenland. That law became into effect after 5 years of negotiations. I was a member of that self-government commission for 2.5 years, and it's been very interesting to see how that ended up with recognizing the Greenlandic people. Of course, according to international law, that doesn't depend on who is actually staying in Greenland, but we have more than 80% of our population is Greenlandic, and the rest is Danish or Faroe Islanders. So in that way, you must understand that the Act on Self-Government is not an indigenous government. It's a public government. Within that, we have some indigenous rights that have to be made sure that they will continue. Of course, without money, no government, so the Greenland self-government authorities get a subsidy, annual subsidy of 3.5 billion. Why is it? From it's Danish kroner, and $1 is 5.5 Danish kroner. So learn a little bit about other monies in the world. There's also a section here that gives the right of Greenlanders, of the Greenland government, to use our resources. And this is the first I think example of how much an indigenous peoples actually can gain of independence and sovereignty on their own resources. We have during the Home Rule also the authority to run the renewable resources, and now we have the right to use the non-renewable resources as well. But up to a point, there's up to a point to 75 million Danish kroner a year. If that exceeds, then we will have to send the rest to Denmark, and then when we have paid back the 3.5 billion Danish kroner, then we will have to think how we will continue that connection. And Greenland, the Act as number 14 talks about that Greenland actually have a right to negotiate international trade and other parts of international cooperation. Right now, the head of our government, the Prime Minister, Kubi Kleist, is also chairing the European Union members that are connected through the overseas land and territories institution within the European Union. And they are connecting to former colonies outside of Europe. And that way, we are a part of the decisions makers in the EU membership, even though we are not members of EU. Well, that was a little bit too long. I will continue very fast here, but now you know a little bit about Greenland. Well, what's happening is that from the situation that actually started way back when the first environment protection strategy was established, was that we were beginning to highlight the climate change that was happening, and that the people themselves have observed. It took a while, and then there was a big scope around 2006 and 2007, and by the time that we learned each other here with the Dickey Center, the issue about climate change came up. And what is the climate change issue for the rest of the for the world? It's more about extractive industries. It's more about what would happen with the opening of if the sea ice in the North Pole in the future will disappear in the summertime. Well, but we know now that because of the ice situation are changing fast over here, the Russians, of course, have already started the Northeast Passage seaway, and they do it in the summertime. And of course, what we think would happen in the future is that the Northwest Passage that goes this way might be open for seaways transportation to North America. And I'm from here originally, so I have placed a big port there already. No. But you see that when we are traveling to Berlin, we are traveling to Washington, we are traveling to Paris. Well, what they talk about is, oh, how does it look like? Is it changing everything? And well, we say, well, we don't know because we are not part of the business going on. But it's going to change the way that that kind of transportation happens, and it starts with the Russians. Unfortunately, I would say, because this is not open yet, only a few days, maybe weeks in the summertime, you are able to do that. Also, this area, we are a little bit nervous about this area because that's where all the animals, beluga, polar bear, whatever, connect to Greenland that way. That in that area as well. So this ocean is connected to each other from many, many years, and that's how the Tuli people have always traveled across to Canada, even before Canada was called Canada. And the Tuli people actually in the 40s and 50s helped the Canadian Royal Mounted Police to police this area before they formed their own small village up there. So it's been part of our whole area. And, that development will change the whole strategic situation as well. If you look at Greenland now, you will see that we have licenses of exploration, not exploitation, but exploration of oil, and even out here. And Russians are the only ones, besides us, having drilled out here in the Davis Street and in that area and in that area too. It's a Scottish company called Cairn that have had exploratory drilling out there. So that's part of the Greenland policy on to find out what kind of resources we actually have. And some of those ICAT students also went to the East Greenland part here, which is part of a national park. It's the world's biggest national park that goes up here, over there, and over there. But guess what? Whenever there's an interest of oil or mineral resources development, then that national park might be, not protecting in the way that we thought a national park would be. One of the fastest glaciers in the world are running this way out from here. Inuit. That's where you see so many pictures whenever TV are showing climate change, whatever. Those pictures are from there. And I'm born here in a small island. And I live here today. Where is it? Maybe here. Nope. Well, if you look at the Greenland economy and the wish to become economically reliant, self-reliance, then you'll see that we have some agreements with European Union where they have fishing rights. And besides that, we have fisheries for the amount that you will see. So using our prawns, our Greenland halibut, and also other living resources and fish would sustain 57,000 people. And but of course, we have that gap of 3.5 billion Danish kroner, and that's why we are looking at other possibilities. We have the quotas of fish that you'll see here, and it's mostly high seas fisheries like prawns, and then the inshore fisheries is also very important for the former hunters that are now fishermen in small boats. And those you don't go on fishing or hunting without knowing the rules, and the management is very clear, and we have international cooperation as well on how many catches we should have. So everything is international now, and that's how it's so important that we connect also on other issues. You see, if you look at this, our total number is 57,000. But the employed people, you will see that among the 35,000, almost 36,000 of our manpower, 27,000 are employed, and around 9,000 are not. But on the figures that we have here, right here, you have to remember that students are not unemployed, but those are the official figures I have from the government, and some of them are actually retired people, and so the unemployment might be a little lower than this one. I would say maybe 7,000 or so, but it's a big part. So you see that maybe you wanted to see how many hunters, how many fishermen we have, but actually that's how the figures show us that this is a modern society, Scandinavian style public government, and we do have our own institutions and our own decision makers. When we talk about the manpower demand, you'll see that a large-scale introduction of possibly aluminum sinter, and then iron ore and the rare earth mineral resources. If we are starting the whole thing, we will have to invite up to 8,000 foreign workers. And it's mostly what we have seen in Iceland, Chinese workers or Eastern Europe workers that officially they are earning something called international regulated, but it's really the lowest of the low. So the estimate of the persons needed for large-scale development in Greenland is around the amount of the Danish people that live in Greenland. So the Danish are around a little over 6,000. So they will become a minority in our country. That creates, of course, a lot of speculation, and we have to look into the socio-economic consequences of that. Then, if you look at the oil in the future, well, that's another story. It's we don't have figures yet on how many oil employees there would be. There's no studies, and what would happen in that area is just guessing. And you'll see if there's a production of that amount and this amount, how much influence it will have. And the oil possibilities are so big. That's what the U.S. Geological Institution are telling us, but we haven't struck oil yet. And we don't know how much influence that would have. If it's the amount of what is found in Alaska, that would, of course, transform the whole country of only 60,000. You will see quite another development. And that's what we are looking at. And is that a bright new future? Or is it a fight for survival? That depends on when this is going on. You see some figures from the Cairn Energy, the Scottish company that have been drilling since 2010. And you see a few figures here. But of course, we have to see what would result. What would be the result on carbon emissions? The prognosis here, we are talking about the large-scale mining operations that the Greenland government have to decide on. And you see that the level of the whole national emissions from 2007 is around 674,000 tons. And the Bureau of Minerals and Petroleum in Greenland have estimated 2.1 million tons, it's 4 times more. And of course, and you'll see what kind of other projects that is would be the result. And we will have to use a lot of quotas to a cost of 216 million Danish kroner annually. So those figures are telling us that even though we are developing Greenland to being one of the greenest energy producers in the world, 60% of our electricity comes from hydropower, which powers the cities, small cities, and communities. And in the next few years, we will be able to cover up to 80%. But then comes the oil companies, then comes the multinational companies and their mineral resources development, then the whole picture will change. I think that we have a bright future. On the other hand, it goes hand to hand that you also have to fight for survival as people. We are not millions, and United States is the nearest cooperator in the strategic discussions, and the question about the influence of the Chinese would also come up. A new strategic discussion would have to take place. The question is only, I hope that we are not repeating the Cold War era that we went through in the 70s and 80s, that restricted quite many things, and that's why it took so long to get into Danish Greenlandic dialogue on the future of the autonomous relationship. I hope that we be working together closely with Denmark. I hope that we will have a respectful relationship with United States. I hope that the relationships that we have with you, and also with Inuit of the Arctic, of Alaska, that would be the one that guides you into understanding what kind of development is a bright new future, and what kind of development is something that will destroy the whole future. So they go hand in hand, and that's the hard realities of life. And we have that chance, only one chance, to understand and work with each other, and see that the whole Greenland or the Arctic are not destroyed by environment disasters, whatever, how it is. But that's the wish for my speak here, that we also continue with Dartmouth, with the ICAT program. I always, wherever you go, Ken, you will see this picture ending my. This is where, in my office, when we signed our contract, and thank you so much. Goeienacht.
Dickey events, we always like to give students the first crack. I know it's getting late, so we need to file out, that's okay. I'm looking for student questions.
Is there a policy of don't ask?
When you mentioned certain times, like when you met first. Oh, thanks. You mentioned how interesting it was to first meet an Inuit person from Canada, and you talked about working with Sami people and in Russia by the Bering Strait, and a little bit about relations with people in the Aleutians. And I just wanted to hear a little bit more if you had something to tell us about how those experiences are enlightening, or how it can help maybe empower your movement and try to confront some of these issues by working with peoples from such a large area. Like, if you could.
Yes, we have, well, the short version is that I think that if you look at the ICC's history, you will see that cooperation with other indigenous peoples around the world is very important. We learn from their experiences. Even large indigenous groups, wherever they are, they have encountered problems that are almost, impossible to recover from. And the Arctic is, I don't believe that the Arctic will be inhabited by millions and millions of people in the future. It's still harsh, even though there's a climate change going on. I hope that that the future will also show that the human connection, the human dimension of all development should be a force on everything that we decide on. That money is not that counts the whole idea of life. We have a chance here to invite so many other indigenous groups around the world, not only them, but also academia, especially those that are studying in our areas in the Arctic, that they change their policies like Aqqaluk is all about, to connect to people, to connect to the institutions where you are operating, and also to help the local people to understand what's going on and why you are measuring the thickness of ice. The thickness of ice is not just a measure. It's also a picture of how life is changing. When I was a kid, I went with my father out hunting by dogsled, but he was also working with something else. He was actually in telecommunications, and he was an expert on ice. And I learned a lot. And the chance in the ice in the north, in my hometown as well, that haven't had solid ice for the last 10, 15 years is a real difference from the whole thing. It's also altering the culture. It's altering the daily life of people. While you are studying it, you also have applied to be able to show that through your scientific work, you can also understand and also tell people what kind of chances that are happening. And through that, that one, that's a Marshals. Marshals are not allowed to stay here.
Please here.
Yeah, given Inuit populations a special relationship with, with polar regions, and the fact that polar regions are more visibly affected by climate change, do you see a particular political role for Inuit populations moving forward on international legislation on climate change?
So you're talking about the special relationship between Inuit and climate change in Greenland. What are the opportunities for Inuit to more generally influence the climate change issue globally because of your special experience? How can you be leaders in the global climate change arena? Is that something you aspire to?
Yeah. You see, when we try to convince the world community way back in Copenhagen 2009 at the COP15, we saw that there are so many differences, so many areas of where the interests of others are stronger than our own interests. I think that it was a shame that we have never accomplished, the world itself have never accomplished anything on the climate change issue. It remains to be seen what kind of strength we would have when the world leaders actually on their agenda, it's more becoming lower and lower. And of course, therefore, the other peoples have the plight to go and tell you what's going on, and also be aware of the needs that we have, because we need to have a stable economy as well. But of course, aluminum industry is not a stable economy at all, or even the mineral resources extraction is not, But that's a part of where we will be able to use the resources. It's. I always thought that even though we have the dream and the aspirations coming from our literature, from our history, from our culture, that we also have applied for our kids and for the future to show them what are the possibilities, but without paying the price, which is our soul, our identity as people that are the guardians of the Arctic, and we have no others. And we have this opportunity, like I am so happy that you invite me here, that I'm happy to speak English as well, even though this is, my language is daily, in my daily life in Greenlandic and then Danish. And that's how our lives have developed. And I'm sure that we have in the youth the willingness in Greenland to study abroad as well, to learn other languages. And Greenlanders are very willing to take over many things and form it in the way that fits to their way of life. And that's why, Greenlanders took over the Lutheran Church way back 300 years ago, and now we think that we actually invented the whole thing. And that's why also that that that's a way to transform your lives without degrading your wealth, the spiritual wealth inside. And we don't have a middle ground any place. But with the dialogue that we have, you and us will be able to maybe influence a little bit, not to continue the disappointed meant that many indigenous peoples around the world are feeling. Greenlanders are positive people, and we are hoping that many of you will someday come and visit our country. We have one radio station, national radio station, that are very wonderful place where you can listen to Greenlandic stories, Greenlandic music. And also, every Sunday since 1956, from 12 to 1:30, I have listened, the whole Greenlandic people have listened to classical music on Sundays. That's how we also are influenced by other cultures from outside, and we are happy with it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.